Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM News Talk Radio. I have the honor, frankly, of every night, Monday through Friday, at 6 o'clock, bringing you interviews with fascinating people. And I got to tell you, one of the most interesting persons that I've met, persons, whatever, that I've had the privilege of meeting over the course of the last couple of years, someone that I had the privilege of sharing a stage with at one point in time, is Cindy Ashton, who is a singer and a speaker and a coach, and just an all-around, TV host of her own show. And she's someone that I knew from sort of small business and networking in Canada, who then moved down to the United States and made her future in the United States, and is now living in the New York area. I think just across the river from New York. And so I thought it'd be great to check in with her about how she's doing with COVID-19 that we're all worried about, but then also check in with her. She's got a new book out. She's got a coaching series that she's put online that some of you may have seen in regards to how to present in this new media where we're all on Zoom and Skype and a whole bunch of other things. So Cindy, wonderful to see you again. How are you?
Oh my goodness, Brian, I love hanging out with my Canadian peeps because people are like, oh, you've been living in the US for so long. And I'm like, but I'm still a Canadian at heart. You show me beaver tails and I'm in.
Beaver tails. Oh, no.
I actually am gluten-free and I don't have a lot of sugar in my you show me Timmy's and I'm in. That's where I kind of break my...
Well, I go to New York a lot. Every time I go to New York, stop at the duty free and buy some maple syrup or some maple sugar candy, because I always end up giving it to whoever I'm meeting, bankers or whatnot in New York. I give them some maple syrup or maple sugar. So yeah, next time I'll have to remember beaver tails for you.
Oh no, I was just teasing about the beaver tails, but it's such a Canadian thing, right?
It is. So yeah. Tell me, how are you? You are in the New York area, I understand.
Yeah.
Whereabouts do you live now? Just across the river?
I live on the Jersey side. So if you know where the Lincoln Tunnel is, which is the Lincoln Tunnel puts you right into Midtown New York. I'm about a mile or two north of that, right on the river. So I literally wake up every morning, I look out my window and I see the sun rising over New York, which is now the city that is finally sleeping. It's interesting. I mean, this week especially, a lot of people have been calling me going, oh my God, you're in New York. Do you know how many people are dying right now? And I'm like, yep. Like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm good. They're like, why are you so calm? And yeah, I'm just staying really safe. I'm only going out once a week to get groceries, and I'm taking my wipes, my hand sanitizer, and sorry, go ahead.
Once a week, that's it. That's good.
Yeah, so I really bulked up without being those obsessive people who over bulked up, but I bought, big packages of the rice and the beans and the lentils and so I have all the staples. So my once a week at this point is just making sure that I get fresh vegetables and fruits. But yeah, I'm only going out once a week now.
Excellent.
Once every 7 or 8 days.
And New Jersey has got, some pretty bad statistics. I think second worst after New York City.
Yeah. So, and it's all here on near the river because all of us commute into Midtown. So yeah, it's really interesting because I was supposed to go for surgery last Friday, and they're like, we have ran out of supplies in the hospital. We can't take you. We're overflowing. And I'm like, okay, it's a good thing that I'm very holistic and meditating and doing yoga, and that I'm finding ways to take care of my body. But it's really tough because at this point, a lot of people are being turned away. Ambulances are miles long, maybe not miles long, but I mean, it's really tough to get in there. A friend of mine is a nurse in New York City, and I was just watching on his Facebook how there's literally trucks that are refrigerated that are holding dead bodies.
I know, it's unbelievable.
It's pretty horrifying, and I'm just grateful that I'm safe and that I love where I live and that I love my home. And we only have one case of COVID in this building. And our building our condo has been really great. They've literally taken out all the furniture so nobody could sit in the lobby. They've given the security guys down there masks and gloves.
And you're wearing gloves when you press the elevator buttons, I hope.
No, I don't. So here's my theory. Okay, I'm not a medical professional, but here's my thing. I'm not doing the glove thing because you're touching all these germs. And then how do you know you're not touching other germs when you take them off and put them back on? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So what I'm doing is one hand never touches anything. and I have my hand bacterial, my hand sanitizer. So my clean hand is only touching the hand sanitizer. This is really obsessive. And then I'm able to, like, with my elbow and different parts of my body, do
Touch
that,
things.
but then I spray all the time. So I'm only affecting one hand and it never ever touches my face, and I'm constantly spraying every 2 seconds. So because I'm nervous about the gloves, because if
No
you
question.
touch stuff, right? Because I see people reusing the same gloves and I'm like,
well, and the biggest problem with the gloves is a lot of people are using the gloves and protecting their hands, but then they're touching their face with their gloves, and so they're just transferring the germs from wherever right onto their face. Anyway, Cindy, I'm glad that you're healthy.
I'm doing well.
I hope that the surgery wasn't something critical. Most elective surgery in Canada as well has been canceled. So I hope you're okay, and I'm glad you're staying healthy. And we're going to take a break for messages, and we're going to come back and we're going to hear about some of the projects that you've got underway. So hang on, everybody, for more with Cindy Ashton in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Cindy Ashton, who's a friend of mine from Toronto who now lives in New York, and she's a singer, and she's a speaker, and she's a coach, and she's a dynamic individual, and she's got out a book, and she's been doing lots of YouTube videos and things like that. Cindy, what's this new book that you've got out?
So I'm super excited to introduce it. It is called Liberate Your Voice, How to Trust Your Power in a World That Shuts You Down. Now, here's what's really interesting is that I've always said I'm never writing a book. And then because I'm a professional speaker and have been for years, I had a really big corporation say, well, we never pay our speakers, but we'll pay them a book. Do you have a book? And I said, when's your conference? And they said, April, which would it be next week, the gig. And I said, yes, I have a book.
And
so
you wrote what right away?
So I just figured I had like almost a year to write the book. And it actually ended up really interesting because I've been teaching people presentation skills for over 20 years now, being a keynote speaker myself. But what was interesting is that I didn't specifically write a book on presentation. One of the things that I have noticed from my own personal life, as well as just years of training other speakers and executives and salespeople and business people, is that the minute that we don't trust our gut is the minute that we make poor choices. The minute that we let the voices of other people, the media, social media, our parents, schooling, work, like the minute we let all that infiltrate us is when we lose our power. And that we don't make good decisions, but we also are not great presenters. So it's fascinating because through my years of coaching, I've just really noticed a lot of people losing their power on stage or in meetings because they're letting the voices that are influencing them to come across in their interactions. So while, yes, there's a lot of tactics in there that are about communication and how to speak in your power, most of it, not most of it, but a big chunk of it is about learning to discern what's truly your inner voice and your inner wisdom versus listening to the other voices and deciding if you're going to take those opinions on or not.
Okay, well, that's absolutely fascinating. But how does one figure out what's their own voice rather than the voices that are sort of bouncing around in their head from everyone else?
Yes, I think that's an excellent question. Before I tell you that answer, it's fascinating that I'm writing this specific book now, because if anything, people need this book right now and these exercises, because right now we're inundated with so much news and so much fear that people are making decisions because and it's not blaming anybody. It's hard to hold your energy space and feel good and make good decisions when you have so much fear coming at you.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing a lot of people being completely debilitated and out of their power in this, and it's not a blame thing. This is a very difficult situation. So how do we actually start to listen to ourselves? Well, so I'm going to go scientific for a moment. One of the weird and wonderful things about me is when I did my degree at York University, not New York, York University in Toronto. So when I do interviews in the US, they're like, oh, and she went to New York University. And I'm like, no, I'm Canadian. The bio is right, you're wrong. So the interesting thing is that I obviously, being a singer, I did opera as my first major, music opera. And then I did kinesiology, which in the US means something differently than in Canada. The kinesiology is the study of the human body. And so I was literally half the day I'm going, oh, you're no, and then the other half of the day I was dissecting bodies and brains and hearts and learning about the human body. And I specialized in relaxation therapy.
Okay.
So from a scientific perspective, this is all going to connect. We have our nervous system, and we have the sympathetic nervous system, and we have the parasympathetic nervous system. So the majority of the world right now, and rightly so, are in their sympathetic nervous system, which means their heart rate is up, their thoughts are running a mile a minute, they're tense, and they're not present in their body. They're in the fight, flight, or freeze mode right now.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
Flight, fright, no.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
Thank you. I'm glad you got the triple
And
S.
that's the sympathetic nervous system.
Right. And so when we are in our fight, flight, and freeze, any kind of stimulus, any kind of news, anything that's coming at us puts us into a hyperactive state, and then we lose our power. We're not thinking clearly. We make poor decisions, but we also come across in a way that comes across with anxiety, panic, and fear-based, which then contributes to the whole and makes it 10 times worse. So I think about some people I'm talking with, and they're self-isolating, but they are with families. Like, I'm single, and while sometimes I get lonely and I miss hugs, I'm looking at my friends with families, and their families are blowing up because they're isolating altogether. But if they don't know how to get everybody calm, it's going to escalate. So the parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite. It's your relaxation response. So when you know how to activate the relaxation response, your mind slows down and focuses, your muscles relax, your heart rate slows, and you're more grounded and present in your body, so you're able to make better decisions. So you're able to go into that sales meeting without the panic of, oh my God, I have to get a client, but you're able to go in as grounded and calm. Because I'm seeing right now, because people are taking on the fear, again, not a blame thing, it's just we're in a difficult situation. But when you take on the fear and you're functioning from your sympathetic nervous system, if you're a salesperson, that means you're more like this, and you're trying to get the sale, you're trying to get people to listen to you, and you're so busy doing this, you're not listening to your prospect and taking in their energy and making them feel heard. Because most of sales is about people feeling understood, seen, and heard. Right? Or if, let's say that you're trying to manage your team remotely. I'm just talking remote because that's all what we're doing right now. If you're managing your team remotely, or you're delivering a presentation online, as it is, connecting online is a lot harder than doing it in person. And that's another conversation we could have. But imagine, again, if you're in a fear state, suddenly it's like, okay, I'm trying to manage my team. All right, so Brian, I need you to do this. And Susie, I need you to do this. And then it just comes across with this fear that then makes people feel like they're being barked at, that they're like they're feeling that energy that's coming at them, which shuts a person down, and you're not able to have good productivity. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on. People trying to deliver presentations, it's the same thing. So what essentially we want to do to learn to trust our power is slow down. What?
You got to get into your parasympathetic.
You've got to get into your parasympathetic nervous system.
And you will know this undoubtedly far better than I, but what I understand is the sympathetic nervous system is the automatic reaction that comes from when we were dinosaurs or
yes,
whatever. And the parasympathetic is the rational brain side of things. That is what we have evolved in more lately. But the parasympathetic nervous system reacts 15 times slower than the sympathetic nervous system. So, your fight, flight, or freeze is the automatic reaction. You got to take some time for the rational, calm voice to be heard.
Right. And when we learn how to activate that, then we're able to trust our inner wisdom. And people say, what's this intuition thing? I don't believe in it. Here's the truth of it. We all get gut feelings. And I'm not talking about being spiritual or religious, but how many times have you had I don't know, something doesn't feel right? Or as a parent, you're a parent, right, Brian?
Yes, I am.
As a parent, have you ever worried about one of your kids and then you found out later they broke their leg or something had happened? you just had a feeling that something wasn't right.
Not break their leg, but yes, that's the case.
Right. Yeah, that was, or, yeah, like we are all having gut feelings. So when you learn to slow down, then you start to be able to tap into what is my inner wisdom, what is my truth, and what's other people's truth. In addition to be able to being a better communicator and being able to not be so and being able to truly listen. It's so weird having no nail polish on. I have to learn to do my own nails now.
This is a challenge in social isolation. You got to do your own hair, your own nails. I'm trying to figure out how I cut my hair.
I know your hair looks cute. I was thinking it's long. I've never seen you look.
It's never been this long.
I like it long. It gives you kind of that rugged, like I'm like this hardcore business guy that's kind of like rugged now. And I like it, Brian. It's you.
Thanks, Cindy. I appreciate that. Very kind of you.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Ask your next question.
So we've got to get in terms with who we are and what our inner voice is saying. And that's what you've got to figure out to try to figure out how you present. And, so you're slowing down.
Right.
How do you figure out what your inner voice is saying?
All right. So I think the first step we have to look at is how do you actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system?
Slowing down.
Breathing.
Breathing. Okay.
Right. So when you exhale longer than your inhale, it automatically slows you down. But the first thing we need to do is get in touch with our bellies. And I just realized I'm wearing my pajama pants, so I can't stand up and show you this. I could, it would be hilarious. So essentially what you want to be able to do is when we take a breath in to the belly, our diaphragm is this concave looking muscle. When we take a breath in and we take the breath in from the bottom of our lungs, it flattens the diaphragm, which pushes all your guts down, which is why the stomach expands. So when you're taking a breath in, you want to imagine that you have a balloon in your belly and you take a breath into your belly and your stomach expands. And on the exhale, you exhale nice and long. And I can exhale forever being a professional singer. So essentially what you're doing is when you're starting to feel the panic, when you're feeling the busy brain, you're going to put one hand on your chest to start to calm yourself down. That's a comfort move. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your other hand on your belly, which I can't demonstrate.
Okay.
Pants on. And you're just going to take a breath into the hand and the belly. So you take a breath into that hand, fill up your belly, feel it expand, and exhale nice and long. As you're exhaling, imagine the air going down to the ground. Keep your feet on the floor, flatten them out. Take a breath in again. Exhale nice and long. And just keep doing that, and it starts to slow everything down. So that's one technique. But make sure you exhale all your air out before you take the inhale. Otherwise, you leave toxins in your body, and then you get dizzy, and then I get nasty notes.
Okay, but your point is that when you slow down and you use breathing as a technique, or slow breathing, or slow exhale,
many techniques, but yes, breathing's my main one.
You will become more mindful, and your inner voice will speak to you.
It's a little more complicated than that, but yes, because the first step is we need to be more present.
Right.
That's the first step. Is we need to be more present. We're truly not present. As a business person, Brian, how many times have all of us, not just you, been in a networking conversation and somebody says something and your mind jumps to exactly what you want to say next without fully hearing the rest of what they say? We all do it because we're not taught to truly be present and respond from what we're hearing. We tend to be reactive.
Yeah.
Which makes you lose a sale and loses buy-in and loses
people want to be listened to. People want to be heard. No question. People want to be listened to. People want to be heard. Actually, I think one of the best bosses I ever had, Jim Pattison, ran the Jim Pattison Group, $7 billion company that he owned 100% himself. And you've heard this line from a million people, but he always used to say, God gave us 2 ears and one mouth for good reason, because we're supposed to listen twice as long as we talk. And then he would say, but also think about it. God gave us ears that can never close and a mouth that can close. And so therefore, not only are we supposed to listen twice as long as we speak, but we're supposed to listen always and close our mouth a lot.
I love it.
I thought it was good.
I think it's excellent.
And then someone else, I used that at a talk I was doing once, and someone came up to me and said, well, the other thing is reality is the mouth can only go one direction and the ears go almost 360 because each one of them is 180 on each side. And so you listen to everything and you can only speak one directional to one person. And so you're always aware, you're always listening, you're never closed, and you do it all the time. And limit your speaking to exactly what you want to say, when you want to say it, to the specific person you want to say it to.
That's a wise man.
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so you've figured out what your inner voice is because you've listened to your inner voice, and then you've got to go into a presentation. And so how do you then present it?
Yeah. So in terms of, so it's about slowing down and being present so you can listen to others and listen to yourself. But getting the intuition muscle it takes a while, especially if you're skeptical that you have your wisdom within you. You know, there's a bunch of techniques we could talk about, but you just asked me, because I'm listening, about presenting virtually.
Yes. But I want to come back to that in the second segment.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I want to talk about how you figure out, if you were going up on stage today, and it's in a real non-virtual manner, and you've got your inner voice, how do you control your inner voice when you go up on stage? Because what your point was that you've got to have that calmness to present better.
Right. So here's what happens. When we are calm and we are prepared and we've grounded ourselves and we're present, what ends up happening is that when we're on stage, we're actually having a dialogue with the audience, even if they're never talking. And I say this because the majority of speakers and presenters I've been watching and training is that they deliver speech as if it's a monologue. So for example, Brian, how many times have you seen a speaker and they go, how many people want to make more money? How many people want to do this? But they don't actually ask the question and really let the audience answer. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, they're just trying to get some audience participation, but they don't really care what the audience has to say in the end.
Right. And they're not really asking the question. So when I'm training, you know, my clients, I would say, ask the question and literally look, if you're present, you draw people in. So really look at them. So it's like, how many people in here really want to make more money? Yeah, awesome. Like, can you see the difference of me?
Yep.
Just right, because a lot of presenters feel like to be heard, they have to go on audience and go, hey, everybody, let's party. So today we're going to talk about this. And it's very much that push energy. And that is, to me, very old school speaking. That's the old way of speaking that a lot of people just don't know any better.
Yeah.
That they feel that they have to be over the top. And I'm a performer, for heaven's sakes. I'm a very big personality, but I'm grounded. So being over the top actually pushes your energy onto people, which makes them actually not be able to focus on you because they're so overwhelmed by the energy.
Well, it's the old line about when you're speaking too loud, people shut their ears because they can't stand it. And you talk a little quieter, people will actually pay more attention.
They lean in like I'm leaning in right now to you, Brian.
So we're going to take a break and come back more with Cindy Ashton. And we're going to talk about how all of this changes when we're all on Zoom and Skype and FaceTime and YouTube and everything else, the virtual world. So stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960 AM News Talk Radio. We're on every Monday through Friday on 960 AM on the AM dial in Toronto, but you can also get us online at www.saga960am.ca and or my podcasts and my video casts are all available. And Cindy, don't worry, I'm going to send you a link to them all so you can put them on your Facebook or however else you want to put them out. We were just chatting about, that is great. We were just chatting about getting up on stage and using your inner voice to have a better ability to convey what you really think authentically. Right. And you were going to say something else and I cut you off. I apologize. So what were you going to say?
No, this is perfect. So the first step is we need to stop pushing our energy on other people.
Right.
In every situation, but especially on stage. And if we're going to ask the audience a question, we actually have to be, if we're present and we're slowed down, then that inner voice is actually listening. That inner wisdom is listening and feeling the energy of the audience. because that's when you can really go, oh, so you don't want to make more money. Okay, cool. So should I change the talk? Like, then you can play off the audience because you're actually listening. So when you are present and when you're breathing, it does allow you to feel the energy of the audience and be present and let them come to you as opposed to you pushing your energy on them.
Gotcha.
The second thing is that when you are breathing into your belly, what it does is that it stimulates the celiac nerves. I know, me and my science brain. The celiac nerves essentially is your emotional brain, better known as your solar plexus. So if you take your fingers and put them 2 inches above your belly button, that's where your emotional brain is. When you're breathing and presenting from presence and your emotional brain, the breath is literally massaging the celiac nerves, which raises your oxytocin, which is a love drug, which helps you to be more connected to people. But it also helps you to be in touch with your emotions, raising your emotional intelligence and your ability to feel other people's energy and listen.
Okay. Sounds fantastic. So I'm someone who believes in Amy Cuddy's attitude of power posing. I'm not sure if you've seen any of her YouTube videos. And so one of the things that I talk a lot about is becoming more confident, which is, I think, presence to a certain extent, before you're either speaking and or on the radio and or going into a business meeting, a negotiation, a pitch for anything, whatever. And so I go into the washroom or I go somewhere quietly and I do a power pose before I go anywhere, which is probably a little bit of your breathing, but also what it is it's sitting up straight, it's expanding the chest, it's bringing in more oxygen. It's a lot of the things that you talk about. So I guess I've actually done some of the things that you talk about, and Tony Robbins will talk about having to move, and or having a grunt or a something or other, which is something that football players have always done or rugby players have always done. But having that move and that voice, also I think is a way of grounding yourself into your inner confident self. So I've described it not the way you described it, but as sort of gaining confidence, gaining presence.
Yeah. And I love that. And I actually think that what I'm talking about and what you're talking about are related, but they're different.
Okay.
What you're talking about is finding that inner power, which is perfect because you're finding that move, you're finding that pose, you're finding something that triggers you into feeling confident, which is awesome. So that is definitely 100% accurate and part of it. And everybody should find something that triggers them into feeling genuinely powerful and confident. What I'm also talking about is a slowing down piece, because you might do a power pose, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have breathed and you grounded into your body and that you dropped into your presence. They are, to me, they're similar and they're along the same continuum. I feel like yours is the first level, and then when you start to do the breathing and you start to slow down, that's the second level of it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both, you need both in my opinion.
Okay,
So
well,
I love
think
that you
that
brought
sounds
that
great.
in. You made it full circle for us, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, so what about the virtual world? You were mentioning, and you posted something just the other day on Facebook or something like this about how we've all got to speak differently when we're online, or think more mindfully about how our presence comes across when we're online. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of techniques. The first thing I want to say, especially for people who are speakers like you and keynote speakers who are used to delivering from stage, it is a whole other game. And it's interesting because speakers are like, oh no, it's the same. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because here's the truth of it. Even though when you're on stage, you should be listening to the energy and feeling the energy of people and playing off of a crowd, when you're online, you can't be delivering constantly at the camera. What you need to be doing is essentially eliciting responses. So for example, if I wanted to elicit a response on Zoom, we have a chat box. So what I would say is, Brian, or I would say to everybody, okay, we're going to take everybody through an exercise to activate your sensory trigger. Everybody close your eyes. Here's the exercise. Okay, everybody, now I'm going to elicit a response. In the chat box, tell me what was your sensory trigger that came up for you. And then they would write it in the chat box. Or I might say, or I might do a really cool exercise and say, hey, everybody who felt that power surge, or that, Brian just did, or let's say, Brian, you're presenting and you just said, hey, everybody, let's do the power pose together, and everybody did the power pose, then Brian, right, I'm trying to do this and stay in the cameras, but then Brian might say, hey, everybody, we just did the power pose. If you loved it and you're feeling your power, in the comments, write hell yeah.
Okay.
So what you're doing is you're not just delivering and talking at people. You can't do that like you do with an audience that's live. You have to be eliciting responses constantly, getting people to pick A, B, or C, say hell yeah, or say yes, I'm in, or
you're making it interactive in some manner.
It has to be interactive.
Okay.
And this goes for not just regular presenters like you and I, but this goes for people who are managers, who are leaders, because everybody, all these people are trying to lead in corporate right now, virtually, and it's hard enough to get people to have camaraderie in person. So you definitely want to start thinking about, what are my strategic plans that I'm going to be talking to my team about? And what are the questions that I could be asking that they can type in the chat box, or that I can get them to respond? So you have to be, what you said earlier, Brian, much more mindful.
Yeah.
I mean, we should always be mindful, but you have to be exceptionally mindful when you're interacting online.
I do think one of the big benefits of this situation, though, is facial recognition, taking a look at how people respond emotionally. And when you're in a business meeting and around a board table, you're not necessarily looking right at the person. Sometimes you are, sometimes, there's 5 people and you're not looking face to face. And then I'm surprised, a couple of the calls that I've had of late, people are using Zoom or using something or other and don't turn the video on. I'm not quite sure why, but they don't turn the video on, which is kind of crazy, because then it's just a conference call. Because when you actually have the video on and you can actually see the people that are speaking, I find that people are paying a lot more attention to the facial clues, the emotional clues, which is, beneficial. That's what we should want. 97 or something % of communication is through, body language, facial features, reactions, emotional reactions, etc. I had a fascinating conversation. I interviewed the CEO of a big video company, Vimeo, and she said that she thought video was so powerful that it was going to go from 15% of internet traffic to 85% of internet traffic in the next 5 years. And then with this, she said, actually, it might happen in the next 5 months because of COVID-19 and how many people are online doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about Brian, about you, is that you're so deeply wise and you always have such interesting and great insights, which is fantastic. But yeah, I 100% am with you, because if you think about it, what you said is, if you're in a boardroom, you're seeing the back of someone's head. If everyone's looking one way, people are fiddling with stuff, people are not. But on Zoom or Skype, you're either in gallery view, so you're kind of ping-ponging to see everybody, or if you're not in gallery view and you're a speaker view, then one face is coming up, but you're literally looking, and we're close. It's not like we're 10 feet away like we might be in a boardroom. We're actually able to see each other, and we're able to connect better. It's that's a great observation. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you also had made some comments about hand movement and body movement on your Facebook post. Tell me about that.
Yes, I'm trying to think of what Facebook post. I know.
You said don't just sit there like this. You're moving your head. You're moving your face. You're showing some activity.
Yeah. So I have so many. So I have this whole video series on my YouTube. If you want to look up Cindy Ashton, I'm literally doing a whole series on how to be a great virtual presenter. And every 3-4 days, a new video comes out. But essentially, in terms of the body language, one of the videos I did, because I'm not sure which one you're referring to, was around when you're sitting. It's a whole other game than when you're standing. Because when you're sitting, we are automatically taking more stress into our bodies, right? And what ends up happening is if we don't, do the breathing and do some stretching, we end up holding all that tension. And then the tension either makes us come across as overly aggressive. So right now I'm holding a lot of tension and it's making my voice louder. And this doesn't read well. It feels like I'm yelling at you right now.
Right.
Or the tension makes people collapse. And then they look very unconfident on camera. And it changes their voice to be more meek. Now, it's hard for me as a former opera singer to sound meek. I have such a huge voice from all my years of singing opera and musical theater that like small voice for me is still huge. But we have to be mindful that when we're sitting, it's taking intention and it's altering our voice and our body language and our energy and our vibrancy. So even just for everyday good health, what I'm inviting people to do is before you go on camera and sit down, take some time and breathe into your shoulders and just do shoulder rolls. Intentionally breathe and just let that go. I mean, I love doing cactus arms where you stretch your arms back, you drop your scapula, you breathe into the tension because we hold so much cruddy stuff in our traps and in our clavicle, like below our clavicle and all that. So you just want to, and you just want to be able to release that, shake it out. I mean, this is good stuff to do to get your cells moving anyways.
No question.
But you definitely, sorry, go ahead.
No question, I said.
Yeah. So what happens is that you want to go to a meeting and you want to be relaxed, but you want to have energy.
Yep.
It's that balance of being grounded and calm, but having energy. It's really hard to get someone to influence somebody in a positive way when you are carrying a lot of stress when you're sitting, or you're feeling slouchy or your energy's like, So it's important to do moving around, releasing, breathing before you sit down. So you're present and you're alive.
Yeah. And you're a great example because you move, you look alive, you are alive, you're calm, you moderate your voice in a excellent manner. So you're a great example of someone like that. There's no question. And I tend to be too stiff when I'm talking. And so I've got to move my voice more and use more body language. And that's one of the things that you told me when you looked to be on stage, speaking in reality. You said, be more active. And so I've tried hard to be that and own the stage in a greater degree. And that's one of the things that I've noticed about you, probably more than almost any other speaker I've seen. When you're up on stage, you own that stage. You command that stage because you've got presence.
Thank you.
Well, it's true. Anyway, we're going to take another break for some messages, and we're going to come back for some concluding comments with Cindy Ashton in just a minute on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM News Talk Radio. We're chatting tonight with Cindy Ashton from New Jersey in the New York City area. And I've known Cindy for, I don't know, probably a decade or so now. She's a coach, she's a speaker, she's a singer. She moved to the United States and is making her career there now. And Cindy, your TV show won an award, you told me?
Yes, it won a Telly Award. And here's what's really funny. The TV show is called Cindy Uncorked. I get uncorked about important social issues. And the funny thing is that my publicist submitted me for my body shaming episode for this Telly Award. And I didn't know what that was. And she says, congratulations, you won a bronze Telly. There's a gold, silver, and bronze. And I literally said, what kind of BS award is this, right? So then she says, just so you know, gold went to CBS Interactive on the Caitlyn Jenner story.
Oh, really?
And
fantastic.
Silver went to CBS News on the Sandy Hook story. And bronze went to you, Miss Little Cindy Uncork, on a small network for your body shaming episode. And I go, oh, this is a real award. And so if you can see behind me, do you want to see the award?
Yes, please.
It's like an Oscar.
It looks like it. I've been looking at it all day.
It's really heavy. It feels like it's about 10, 20 pounds.
And tell me, what was the show about? Body shaming. So this was...
Yeah. And then it says, I don't know if you can see it. I know some people are listening on the radio, but you can, this is my prize.
But what was that?
I'm so proud of this.
What was your comment on body shaming? That it was bad, obviously?
Hold on. So I did a half-hour episode, and it was probably one of the bravest, craziest things I've ever done in my entire life. So I did a episode where I wanted to talk about the fact that body shaming happens to everybody, not just people that are overweight. So I did a profile of a bunch of different people from the skinny side of the fence, the overweight side of the fence, women who felt that their boobs were shamed for having boobs too big, somebody who is African American, somebody who used to be a man and now is transgender, became a woman. Like, it was just a really brave episode showing how everybody's body shamed. And for me personally, you're going to think I'm nuts. I was not thinking about this when I did it, but I decided to just take my clothes off for the camera. And except for just a little itty bitty bra and a little itty bitty bikini kind of underwear that was nude. So it looked like I was practically naked. And I went in front of a live audience and literally told my story of body shaming and all the scars from I've had multiple heart surgeries, and I literally stripped off in front of a live audience. And it was actually filmed in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, very close to my hometown because I was raised in Mississauga. And literally it was at a restaurant. So people were walking by looking inside, and it was one of those bright ideas I had that I should just strip off my clothes for everybody and tell them my story with it, let them see my scars. And then when I did it, I was like, wow, you're a nut jar. But, it was interesting because they released I think that episode had 74,000 viewers across
Fantastic.
the world.
Congratulations. We should put a
and
link
people
to
were
it
like,
in
that was
this,
probably
show.
one of the bravest things I've ever seen on television. And I'm like, it was really brave.
Send me a link.
Literally the camera came in close to my scars. Like, it was really brave.
Send me a link to the show, and we'll put it in the public publicity for the show.
Me naked.
So what about your singing career? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I just it's not happening now. I'm figuring out how to sing online now, but I just launched my one-woman show in January called Liberate Your Voice, based on my book. And it was like, it's just a whole great story about my own journey of living with chronic illness, which was invisible. You can't see the illness of me. And just how it's been a lifetime of trying to find my own voice, and how we all have something that's invisible that we live with. And for me, it's been, living with chronic pain and illness and heart illness, and how do we find a voice when we're trying to advocate for ourselves when people can't see what we're suffering with. And so I made really terrifying stories very funny, and I had a couple of really good Trump jokes in there, and I belted out some show tunes and an opera aria, and so it was amazing. One person there was a Broadway musical director and said, this could totally be turned into a Broadway musical. It was that good. Like, I got amazing reviews. My mind was kind of blown. So I've got the demo of this and the sizzle reel, and my plan, if this COVID thing ever ends, is to be able to perform this around the world and just give people hopefully entertainment and laughs, but the inspiration to know that we all live with something invisible, and we can be safe in liberating our voices.
Well, that's fantastic. We're going to come back after one final message for some final comments with Cindy Ashton in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, what a fascinating chat with Cindy Ashton. It's great to see, Cindy, you alive and well and living in the New York area. I'm glad that you're well. Keep in touch. If some of my listeners or watchers want to connect up and get your coaching or watch any of your videos, how do they do that?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, cindyashton.com, you will find my presentation training there. You will find my singing there. You will find my speaking there. You will find tons of red carpet interviews. I was recently at the Oscars interviewing celebrities. You'll see links to my TV show. So yeah, it's all at cindyashton.com. And my YouTube channel is Cindy Ashton.
Well, Cindy Ashton, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. It's a real pleasure. And if I could just close by saying, I think you've got some really unbelievably important messages, which is to calm down, find your inner voice, be present, and think about how you present, not just present, whether it's presenting in real life or presenting virtually, with listening to people and paying attention to people and being active and being engaged and breathing right. And so, I think you've got a bunch of really great suggestions for people. And so thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Good night, everybody.